Say it over again.
Mika was going back. The way had been long and weary, and the day was coming to a close. 5 days earlier, the old man had packed a small knapsack with the few necessities his poor income would allow. Then he had set off with the crowd of country people who had been ordered by the king to return to the town where they had been born. Mika walked in the uneven edges of the road so he wouldn't get in anyone's way. Just in front of him, a young woman, heavy with child, rode on the back of a donkey. Her husband led the way, walking slowly to make the ride smoother. They had kept this slow pace all the way from Nazareth, and Mika had followed closely behind. As he walked, Mika thought about the young woman. He could tell that the baby would arrive any day now, and yet the couple traveled with barely any belongings. He wondered if the young mother and her new baby would have everything they needed. The woman was beautiful and kind. Every so often she would turn towards Mika, offering a smile of gentle encouragement as he plodded along behind them. And each time they stopped for water, she made sure that her husband offered Mika a sip. A familiar ache filled his heart as he watched them. Mika and his wife had always wanted a child, but after many years they realized that it wasn't meant to be. After his wife died, the house was left empty, and it had been a long time since anyone had looked after Mika. As the sun took its place in the west, the weary man rounded the final bend. The little town of Bethlehem lay before him, the streets full to overflowing with exhausted travelers, each anxious to find shelter and rest. Feeling the familiar ache that often tugged at his lonely heart, Mika lifted his arm to wave farewell to the young people. Then, after pausing to search for his direction, he entered the bustling town. Dust was filling his sandals as he wandered his way through the streets. The night air had turned crisp and chilly. Mika was hoping to find something to eat and a warm place to stay for the night. Finally, he found the narrow alleyway he'd been looking for. Nestled at the very end, almost hidden by drooping evergreen silver leaves of olive trees, was the inn. It seemed warm and inviting. Soft light from the windows danced off rustling leaves. Aching with exhaustion, Mika made his way past the gnarled trunks of ancient trees to the heavy wooden door at the inn. He took a deep breath and was just about to knock when the door suddenly opened. Before he could say a word, the innkeeper's wife hastily gave the message she had repeated over and over that evening. "I have nothing to offer." Then she paused to look at the frail and weary traveler. One glance told her everything she needed to know. Her eyes filled with sad kindness, and she tenderly whispered, "Oh, I wish I could do something more." She knew the tiny pouch he carried could not possibly contain anything to keep him warm through the cold night. She put her hand on her shoulder and said, "I'll be back in just a moment. Wait here by the door." The woman returned inside. She quietly looked through every cupboard and above each closet, but the guests had taken all the bedding. Finally, she went into her own room. She paused, considering her decision, and then took the wool blanket she had woven by hand from her bed before returning to the door. "All I have is this blanket. If you want it, it's yours to take," she told Mika as she reached the draped heavy blanket over his shoulders. Mika dropped his gaze in humble gratitude and turned to go. She watched him slowly down the narrow path of the hem of the blanket, hanging just above the straps of his worn sandals, as he shuffled out from under the shelter of trees in the crowded street. She called after him, "Good luck on your journey, and God bless your way." Slipping into the crowd of travelers, the old man could feel warm tears of gratitude welling in his eyes. He slowly sighed deeply and, trying not to cry, peered up and down the busy street. There must be a place somewhere in this town that had warm dinner waiting and soft bed to sleep in. Then a glow of flickering candle from across the street caught his eye. Through the open window he watched as a family gathered. The table was meagerly spread, but the warm smiles and animated conversation filled Mika with a familiar longing. He wondered if this humble family might make room for one more. Gathering all his courage, Mika stepped to the door of the tiny home and knocked. The door opened, and with every ounce of remaining hope, Mika asked the man for shelter for the evening. The man softly replied, "We have nothing to offer." He opened the door wider to reveal a house filled with bursting. Belongings from guests who had come to stay were piled deep in every corner. "I wish we could do something, but as you can see, there is no room." The man glanced at Mika's wrinkled face and wondered how long it had been since the old man's last meal. Then, looking closely into Mika's disappointed eyes, he said, "I'll be back in just a minute, if you'll wait by the door." The man went back to the table, where his family sat waiting for dinner, and knelt beside his wife. Her eyes filled with compassion as she listened, and without speaking, nodded her head. The man reached to the center of the table, picked up the loaf of bread and his wife had spent the afternoon preparing. "All we have is this simple bread," he said as he returned to the door, handing Mika and the warm loaf wrapped in cloth. "If you want it, it's yours to take." Mika quietly thanked the man. In his heart, he knew the gift came at a great sacrifice. The man placed a strong hand on Mika's back and steadied him as he walked out the old man down the step and bade him farewell. "Good luck on your journey," he said. Then he took Mika's wrinkled hand in his and added, "And God bless your way." It was very late now. The city was settling down for the evening, and Mika wandered to nearby deserted streets until he reached the outskirts of town. Wrapped in the blanket and carrying the loaf of bread, he looked around. He would have spent the night, as he had so many others, alone. The Bethlehem fields, where the shepherds watched their sheep, were lit up with starry brightness. The light led Mika to a terrace path just outside the city. Up ahead, a flickering lamp hung over the open entry of a small stable. The glow of the soft light was welcoming, and he stepped into the rustic shelter, feeling a welcome warmth the first time that night. But what Mika found was not what he had expected. A hush of wonder filled his heart. In the wooden manger, a newborn infant lay, freshly swaddled and nestled in a bed of straw. His mother, wary but content, lay next to the makeshift cradle, gazing at the tiny boy. Her husband sat closely by, gently stroking her hand. He looked up at Mika, and their eyes met. Mika realized that this was the young couple he had followed from Nazareth. Not wanting to intrude, he quickly backed out at the doorway, but before he could turn, the young man jumped to his feet, put his arm around Mika, leading him back inside. Gratitude overwhelmed Mika, and he realized this couple would not turn him away. But he quickly bowed his head in regret, knowing that there was nothing he could do to show appreciation for their kindness. Then he remembered the blanket and the bread he had received earlier that evening. Perhaps God had blessed Mika's way after all. What had come from humble sacrifice now became heartfelt gifts. Lifting the hand-woven blanket from his shoulders, Mika walked over to the mother, tenderly covering her in its warmth. Then he handed the loaf of bread to her husband. "That is all I have to offer, Claudius. How I wish I could give you much more." Then he knelt by the manger and leaned to kiss the baby on his head. "Your mother is kind and gentle," he whispered, remembering the journey from Nazareth. "Your father let me in the door." He stroked the infant's soft cheek with the back of his crooked finger, pondering what the young couple had just told him about the tiny boy. "They said you're from heaven," he said with wonder in his voice, "and that you've been sent here for my sake." And with that, tears that he'd been holding back all evening finally spilled down the old man's weathered cheeks. His soft sobs filled the silence in the small stable. As he cried, the tiny baby's eyes turned and found Mika's weary face. At once, Mika felt the ache lift from his lonely heart. No, not yet. With a nod from the child's mother, Mika picked up the smiling bundle, held it close. It was the first time Mika had ever held a baby so small. Warmth and comfort filled his heart, and suddenly Mika knew that he had never been lonely again. Gently rocking the baby, Mika faintly hear a chorus of voices echoing over Bethlehem plains. "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill towards men." He looked down the small child nestled in his arms and quietly whispered, "Good luck on your journey, and God bless your way."